It's time for your daily LSU baseball update with Musso at the box. Now, Matt Musso.
And welcome into another edition of Musso at the box. LSU getting set to get underway with the final regular season series of 2024. They welcome in the Ole Miss Rebels to Alex Box Stadium for 3 games with a lot on the line. I mean, a ton on the line. So we will go through our normal preview that we would of Ole Miss, starting pitching matchups, players to watch, keys to the series defining moments that decided all of that. But we also have to look at the NCAA Tournament implications this weekend because there are plenty, not just for LSU, but also for Ole Miss. Both teams firmly planted on the bubble. There are SEC tournament implications this weekend. Seeding, when you play, who you play, all of that determined this weekend at the box when the Rebels and Tigers do battle. So there is a lot to keep your eye on, and we will go through it all right here on Musso at the box over the next 30 or so minutes. So smash the like button, get subscribed up if you have not already on YouTube or on your favorite podcast app, or both. That's greatly appreciated. And, of course, follow me on all social medias. Let's not waste any more time. Let's get right down to business. We will start with our preview of LSU and Ole Miss, and we start with our series overview. This is an interesting one because when you look at both of these teams, they really mirror each other in a lot of ways. We've talked about this throughout the week. I don't think Ole Miss is a very good team. I don't think LSU is a very good team either. But what both of them are teams with plenty of talent that can beat anybody on any given day. You have seen that plenty throughout this season. Both of these teams have taken a series from Texas A&M, who for the large majority of this year was the number 1 team in the country. Ole Miss took a series from Mississippi State, along the way. So, both of these teams have shown that when they put it together, they can be formidable. LSU, the difference, Ole Miss is 1 game better than LSU in the SEC standings right now. The difference between them, LSU won more in the non-conference than Ole Miss did. The Rebels come in 27-25, 11-16 in the league. LSU comes in 33-20, 10-17 in the league. Your overall series record, LSU leads it 182-159. The Tigers swept Ole Miss in Oxford last season. You might remember that weekend. That was LSU's first sweep of the season in 2023. It was a Skeens-Herring game on Friday night. Ty Floyd spun an absolute gem on Saturday in game 2 of that. I was actually at a wedding that night down in New Orleans. And then game 3, of course, was the Travinski 3-run homer in the 9th inning that put LSU on top. They were down 2. That put LSU on top, and they would ultimately win it in the get Ole Miss 3 up, 3 down in the bottom half of the 9th and sweep the series. Oddly enough, the last 2 meetings between these teams have resulted in sweeps. Ole Miss came to Baton Rouge in 2022, and that's really what sparked their run to a national championship. You had the crazy, rain stoppage on Friday night after LSU had taken a 2-0 lead. Ole Miss fights. If the rains come, Ole Miss fights back. They bring back Dylan DeLucia to finish game 1 in that doubleheader. He was awesome. And then Hunter Elliott just shoved, and Ole Miss ends up getting a sweep there and kickstarts their run to a national title. So there's a lot of sweep talk this weekend, especially from LSU's perspective. When you look at this series, the last 2 meetings have resulted in 1 sweep each for either side. So that is a bit of a uniqueness here going into this weekend. The other thing to keep an eye on is, unfortunately, the weather. And y'all know I hate turning this into a weather show. I'm not a meteorologist. That is not my role. But weather could be an issue really all 3 days. You're looking at it. Jay Johnson was asked at his media availability on Wednesday about monitoring the weather.
We obviously want to get the games in. The SEC changed a rule where we do have the flexibility to play Sunday if we need to. So that was smart and logical on the league's part to be able to do that. Obviously they moved the series up because of the impact on the tournament. And, provided we're in the tournament, we're playing on Tuesday. So, I would like to play the games as early as we can, as I'm sure, every other coach in the league feels the same way. Yeah,
and again, that could be a problem. So, you're looking at the rains really coming in Thursday night, potentially, really kind of getting kick-started right around game time, which would be 6 p.m. At that point, you have a 43% chance of storms, and then it goes up to 70% at 7 o'clock and really kind of goes throughout the night. So you will have to monitor that, and to be quite honest, it doesn't get much better for you on Friday either. So that's going to be something to watch. Look, LSU's been very fortunate this season to not have to deal with weather too much, but it's now that time of the year in Southeast Louisiana where you deal with weather every single day, and LSU definitely has to account for that, as does Ole Miss this weekend. All right, that ends your series overview. Let's dive into our starting pitching matchups. No change for LSU in the rotation. Game 1, sophomore lefty Gage Jump gets the ball for LSU. Jump, of course, 4-1 on the year with a 3.86 ERA, 60 2/3 innings pitched on the year for Jump. I mean, he's just really come on strong here as of late. He's got the 17 walks and 74 strikeouts in those 60 2/3 innings. The opponent's hitting just 218. You just want him to continue to be steady Eddie. I mean, he is really taken hold of that game 1 role for you and been awesome the last, call it, 4 weeks for the Tigers. And that's been great to see. He's really stabilized the rotation for you and given you a chance to win 2 games in a weekend by getting you off to a great start and then handing it over to Luke Holman in game number 2. You want to continue to see that walk number be low. That's been the biggest difference, at least that I can see, in his, I guess you want to call it development or a turnaround, that is, at the back half of the year. The walk number has just consistently been, 1, 2, if not 0 in the ball game. I mean, 17 walks and 60 2/3 innings. That's phenomenal. And he's pitched really well at home, as have most LSU pitchers here. But Jump has pitched really well at home. He can pitch to contact in that park as well at the box. One of the more fair ballparks in the country. So that's who LSU will have on the bump in Gage Jump. For Ole Miss, that will be junior right-hander Riley Maddox. Maddox on the year will be making appearance 14, start 12. He is 3-6 on the year, 50 with a 5.68 ERA, I should say, 58 2/3 innings, 22 walks, 42 strikeouts. The opponent hits 282 off of him. You're looking at Riley Maddox, sinker ball. That is going to be the deal. It is a lot of pitch to contact, not overpowering. As you see, only 42 strikeouts and over 58 innings pitched. It's been a problem for him because Ole Miss has been dreadful defensively, and we will talk about that. When you look at Maddox, he's given up 52 runs this year. Only 37 of them are earned. That shows you the rough luck that he has had. The 282 average against shows you a lot of batted balls put in play. Now, the thing for Riley Maddox, he was awesome in his last appearance for Ole Miss against Texas A&M. Like, when you look at how they won that series, it's because their starting pitching pitched the best that they had all year. 6 innings for Maddox, just the 2 earned runs and 7 strikeouts in that ball game against that lineup. He was awesome and gave Ole Miss a chance to win a 1-run game that night, which has been something odd for them. Well, I shouldn't say odd. It's been a rarity for them, which we will get to a little bit later on here in the show as well. So that's what you're looking for there. Again, a lot of pitch to contact. Sinker ball is his best pitch. For LSU, you're looking at junior righty Luke Holman in game number 2. For Holman, it is appearance 14, start 14. He is 7-3 with an ERA of 2.74. 72 1/3 innings pitched, 30 walks, 100 strikeouts even for Luke Holman on the year. And the opponent is hitting just 176 off the Tiger righty. You have to feel good about Holman right now, man. That was a big outing for him at Alabama. It wasn't his most dominant, but he had some struggles on the road, and with all the emotion he had to be feeling, he pitched really well. Got himself into some jams, but got himself out of some jams as well. And we'll go back to it. He's been really good at home for LSU. So that's a spot where I think obviously you feel good. I'll reiterate it, though. Where Luke Holman has to get better right now is the walk number. Like, the walk number has got to come down. You're looking, since the Tennessee outing, 3 walks, then 2 walks, then 3, 5, and 4. He's got 9 walks in his last 2 outings. That's too high. Like, Holman's walk total was really low. It is ballooned here in the back half of the SEC schedule. That can get you into a lot of trouble because Ole Miss has some really good bats in the lineup that you will have to face. So that's, again, going to be the key for Holman. Look, they've won his last 2 starts. Well, really, LSU's won his last 3 starts, even with those walk problems. But with so much on the line here this weekend, you need that number to be a little bit more refined. For for Ole Miss, sophomore lefty Liam Doyle will be on the mound for the Rebels. Doyle, you're looking at appearance 15, start number 11. He's 3-2 with an ERA of 5.29, 49 and a third innings, 20 walks, 77 Ks. Opponents hitting 213. Kind of like a Luke Holman, likes to pitch up in the zone with the fastball, can really overpower some guys. He's one of Ole Miss's best strikeout pitchers, if not their best strikeout pitcher. And I mean, when you look at the numbers overall, 5.29 ERA is not going to jump off the page. The 3-2 record's not going to jump off the page. But Liam Doyle is pitching really, really well as of late. Of course, he had a great outing against Texas A&M. Again, all their starters did. His was exceptional, though. 6 innings, 1 run, no walks, and the 7 punch-outs. But when you look at Doyle, you go from April 5th. April 5th, his ERA was 7.01. Coming into this weekend, he has lowered that to 5.29. More than a run and a half. Liam Doyle has dropped his ERA. He is pitching very well as of late for Ole Miss, and that will be a challenge for LSU. You've seen them kind of ditch the strategy of going righty heavy against lefties as of late because they want Pearson in there, they want Larson in there, so I would expect to really not see much of a change lineup-wise, but they're going to really need to execute because he's got good stuff, and like I said, really is the one guy on Ole Miss's staff that can run those strikeout numbers up, and strikeouts have obviously been a problem at times this year for LSU. Game number 3, LSU's TBA. You know how it goes, y'all. We could throw out all the names that we want. It's going to come down to who they have not used. They are going to go all in Game 1. In Game 2, LSU's looking for a sweep. They are. We never talk about that here. We never mention the S word like that, but that's what LSU's looking for. So you have to win. You can't sweep if you don't win the first one. They're going to go all in. Everyone's available out of the bullpen in game number 1 and game number 2. So whoever's left, that's who LSU will start and try to piece it together with in game number 3. For Ole Miss, should be a very familiar name, junior righty Mason Nichols. And Mason Nichols is a really good arm. 17th appearance, 6th start. He's just recently broke his way back into the starting rotation. 4-1 with a 3.5 ERA, 36 innings, 18 walks, 41 strikeouts, and the opponent is hitting 200 off of Mason Nichols, and he has been a nice jolt for them in the rotation, being back in there. I mean, look, the numbers, when you just look at them compared to Maddox and Doyle, you see obviously the difference in them there, but he likewise pitched into the 6th inning, gave up 1 run against Texas A&M. The game got out of hand, from Ole Miss's bullpen. But Mason Nichols and the stuff is good. Like, I mean, it's going to be, a low to mid-90s fastball. He's got the breaking ball to go along with it. He's just been very good for them. Really, the one black eye for him was the start against Auburn. Auburn tagged him pretty good. But outside of that, he went into the 7th inning against Mississippi State, only gave up a run, went 5 innings against A&M, like we said, only gave up a run. Like, he's been really good against good competition. And when you look at LSU struggles in Game 3, Mason Nichols is a guy who can make it pretty miserable for LSU just looking at numbers, and on the surface, especially when, as we established earlier this week, their biggest problem in Game 3 right now is hitting with runners in scoring position. That's been the consistent flaw for them throughout the season in game number 3, and it's been magnified here in the last 10. So that is definitely a matchup to keep an eye on because Game 3 could ultimately be huge here in this weekend. When I look at Ole Miss, we mentioned it kind of off the top. Ole Miss has some wins over some really good teams. They took a game from Georgia. They took a game at Tennessee. They beat Texas A&M and Mississippi State in series 2 out of 3. When they've put it together, they've been really good. So how have they done that? Well, when you go through their schedule, there's kind of a clear demarcation, at least that I found. And it's 5 runs. Ole Miss has won 27 games this year. In all but 2 of those wins, they have scored 5 or more runs. In all but 2 of those wins. And on the flip side, in their 25 losses, only 4 times this year have they lost a game scoring 5 or more runs. 5 runs has been a really important number for Ole Miss this season. It's going to be up to LSU's pitching staff to hold them under that, because the wins just haven't been there because the pitching's struggled. But when they get good outings from the starters, like you saw against Texas A&M, this looks like a really, really good team in the Rebels. Now, I've liked what LSU has done against starting pitching all year. There's a few outliers, Jack Caglione, Carter Holton, now Ben Hess. But for the majority, LSU has done really well against the opposition starter. It's been hitting the bullpen that had been the problem for LSU. So when I look at these guys and I see, yes, they pitched great against Texas A&M, I also look and say, okay, well, where is that really the rest of the season? And it was by far Ole Miss's best outings against A&M. Can LSU continue to have success against starting pitching like they have and get those Rebel starters out of the game early and get deep into that bullpen? And if they can, there should be opportunity to win ball games late and score runs late for LSU, or maybe even early, depending on when you knock out the starter. And ultimately, that could potentially put some distance between you and Ole Miss, especially if Gage Jump and Luke Holman and Gavin Guidry and Christian Little and Griffin Herron and all those guys are pitching like they have down the stretch here. That's how you can hold them under that 5-run threshold and maybe even build up a nice lead yourself. But that is something interesting that I did find. Very much a demarcation there at 5 runs for Ole Miss when it came to wins and losses so far this season. So file that away when you look at this. And keep in mind LSU and the success they've had against starting pitching for the large majority of the season, not the few outliers that we have seen where guys shoved against them pretty good. When you look a little bit deeper at Ole Miss in a overview, they hit 261 as a ball club. That is 13th in the Southeastern Conference, but they have a few guys that you definitely want to keep an eye on. Ethan Leger is the leading hitter on the team. He is also second on the club in home runs with 13. He's been fantastic. Luke Hill is a transfer from Arizona State. LSU was actually in on him a little bit last year in the portal as well. 297 overall in the year, but man, it has been awesome for him in conference play. If you're looking at Luke Hill hitting 337, and he's riding an 8-game hitting streak coming into this series, and 6 out of those 8 games have been multi-hit efforts. So Luke Hill, extremely hot coming into this series against LSU. Andrew Fisher is a transfer from Duke. Ole Miss really went heavy in the portal, as you can see. Andrew Fisher, a transfer from Duke. 295, leads the team with 20 homers and 57 RBI. The 20 homers are just 4 short of Tim Elko's single-season record at Ole Miss, to give you an idea of the season that Andrew Fisher is having. And then, y'all, look, Ethan Groff. I mean, the numbers aren't going to jump off the page for you when you look at Ethan Groff, but that's a really talented hitter and somebody that I know Jay Johnson has a lot of respect for. You should be very familiar with him. You saw him when he was at Tulane, and he made LSU's life miserable when he was at Tulane, and you obviously saw him last year with Ole Miss as well. That's an extremely talented hitter that the numbers do not tell the story on in Ethan Groff, so definitely keep an eye out there for number 10. Then, of course, Will Furness. I mean, the connection to LSU is well known there, and he's actually done much better here as of late. He's hitting just over 230 on the season, but he's hitting some 40 points higher than that in conference play. He looks to really start to be developing there. So, look, like his father, big left-handed bat there in the middle of the lineup is Will Furness. Now, we mentioned we mentioned the pitching staff for the Rebels, and the bullpen has just been a problem. Like, it has. You look at a guy like Mason Morris, they lean on him a lot, 21 appearances on the year, but it's an ERA of 6.5. And that's kind of just the story you'll see a lot. Josh Mallets has been their most effective reliever up to this point, 16 appearances and a 4.4 ERA. Can put it past you a little bit, not overpowering, but can put it past you a little bit with 30 strikeouts and 26 in the third. So that's somebody. Braden Jones is a guy they lean on a lot, second on the team in appearances with 19, but it's an ERA north of 5. Like that's just what you're going to see from this Ole Miss team. If you can knock that starter out early and get into this bullpen, there should be plenty of opportunity for LSU. 5.91 is Ole Miss's team ERA. That is 13th in the SEC. We touched on the fielding for the Rebels, and this could make all the difference in this series. Ole Miss is dead last in the league in fielding, and it is not close. They have been dreadful. Ole Miss is fielding .965 as a club. They average more than one error per ball game so far this season. You're looking at 64 errors total, and a lot of them have come, as you might expect, on the infield. What's going to be massive for LSU is just putting the ball in play. Like, do not punch out. You have got to put as much pressure on this Ole Miss defense as you can, because they have shown, like, the sample size is large enough here in the last regular season series. They've shown that they will fold under that pressure. And that is also how you can build a lead against this team. They will give you gifts. Take them. Now, if you're LSU, avoid giving them gifts. LSU, we talked about it earlier in the week, LSU is not a bad fielding team. What's been a problem for LSU is when those errors have popped up. And they have popped up at some of the most inopportune times throughout the course of this year. You have also the wild pitch. LSU leads the SEC in wild pitches. Your catchers have got to block it up. Sometimes it's difficult. I get it. Some of those pitchers have great stuff, and they can spike the breaking ball way in front of the plate, and it's an impossible pitch to block. There's also been some that have just squirted through guys' legs. You have to avoid giving them gifts and only take the gifts that they will give you, because this team will give you plenty of them. And LSU has tried offensively as of late to put pressure on the opposition with bunts, with hit and runs, with some stolen bases in there. Do as much of that as you can against Ole Miss and see if you can't get them to crumble under that pressure with that tough fielding percentage. So, look, if I'm looking at them overall, it's a lineup that I think is probably a little bit better talent-wise than the numbers that they've put up. So it's going to be a challenge for LSU's pitchers. I think their starters are okay. I think LSU has just done so well against starting pitching this year that I like LSU in that matchup. And I think their bullpen has been their weakness. I think their pitching staff as a whole has been their weakness, obviously, but I think their bullpen has really been the weakness. And LSU's done better game 1, game 2 as of late, hitting the opposition's bullpen. So that obviously bodes well. If you're looking for another key for LSU, I'll tell you what we said all second half of this year when it comes to the pitching staff. Keep the leadoff man off base. Get off the field when you can. No 2-out runs. And keep the leadoff guy off the base paths. When LSU's done that, they've obviously pitched a lot better down the stretch here, and that is what they have done. All right. Let's talk NCAA Tournament, because both of these teams are sitting on the bubble. This is a massive opportunity for LSU. LSU sits here at a top 35 RPI coming into this series, right where we thought they'd be, right where they are, and Ole Miss is a quad 1 opportunity. This is a big series for your resume, which is already good. And when you look at the bubble is soft. We've talked about that. We sat there and picked apart resumes of teams like Utah and St. John's and teams like that who are getting the benefit of the doubt for being ranked high in their conference, even though their conferences aren't good. Indiana is another bubble team that should not be a bubble team because their metrics stink. The bubble is soft. So the more LSU can bolster their resume, the more likelihood you have of getting in at 13 wins or getting in at 12 with a win or 2 in Hoover. Xavier, we mentioned Xavier. Xavier right now is 26th in the RPI. If Xavier can bump themselves up into the top 25, that is 2 more quad 1 wins. And you might say, really, we're scoreboard watching Xavier? Yes, because all you care about is getting as many quad 1 wins as you possibly can. And with the bubble being soft, that is how 13 wins can get you in. Combined a soft bubble with an elite strength of the SEC this year, where 13 out of the 14 teams have top 50 RPIs, and that is how you can just bolster your resume to where an outlier where only 38% of the teams since 99 have gotten in with 13, where you can get potentially 2, if you look at Florida and LSU, in with 13 wins this year. Soft bubble, elite league that you play in, that's how. So you want Ole Miss. If LSU beats Ole Miss, they will, like 2 out of 3, Ole Miss will probably drop out of quad 1, but not by much. And if they do something in the SEC tournament, they can bump themselves back into that. And if Xavier can get themselves up 1 spot really, but 2 to maybe feel a little bit more comfortable, that's also potentially 2 more quad 1 wins on a soft bubble. Like, you go and you look at Baseball America's projection, their projected field of 64 that came out on Wednesday. LSU still in the first 4 out, but now St. John's has joined them there. And we've been over it. Their resume stinks. The Big East is not a good league. I don't care if they finish second there. It's a bad league, and their resume stinks. The same thing with Indiana. Indiana's resume stinks. Utah's resume stinks. Louisville struggled in their series. They got swept in North Carolina. They're still trying to get to 16 conference wins in the ACC. They might not do that. Same thing for Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech needs to get to 16 wins in the SEC, and they've got a really tough series this week, and I believe they're playing Florida State. So the bubble is soft. A sweep getting you to 13, feeling good. 12, you have to do some work in the SEC tournament like we talked about. But again, the bubble's not good this year. It's a terrible place to be. We've been over that. You got to watch out for bid stealers and all of that. And maybe the bubble gets a little stronger. But for teams like who we've mentioned, Indiana, St. John's, Utah, like, their resume is not going to strengthen over the next few games. It's just not. At least not to the point where it should ever rival LSU if they get to 13 conference wins in the sense of regular season and or help with the tournament. Now, Ole Miss is in the same situation. Ole Miss is 2 wins away from 13. They come in here knowing they just need to win 2. LSU's looking at it going, you have to at least win 2. You really want to win 3 and just get yourself in that way. But there's a lot on the line, obviously, for Ole Miss. They can take advantage of that same soft bubble, and their metrics are better than LSU's. So that's another thing, like getting a head-to-head. If this comes down to the committee having to choose, you want the head-to-head to win, the head-to-head win over Ole Miss. But I mean, Ole Miss has 12 quad 1 wins, the number 1 strength of schedule, a top 25 RPI. Like, their metrics are better than LSU's overall. There is a lot riding on this from an NCAA tournament standpoint. I know I just threw a lot out there really fast. I hope that was, able to be comprehended. But that's where you are there. Lastly, let's talk about the SEC tournament, and I'll give you a series prediction. LSU right now, they need to win 1 game. LSU wins 1 game this weekend. They clinch a spot in Hoover. I know that's not your goal to just clinch a spot in Hoover. I get it. LSU could be as high as the 10 seed. They would need to sweep Ole Miss and have Florida be swept by Georgia, and LSU would then be the 10 seed in the SEC tournament. That would put them in the 3rd game of the day on Tuesday. Let me actually double-check that real quick. That would put them, I apologize, in the 2nd game of the day on Tuesday in Hoover. If LSU takes 2 out of 3 from Ole Miss, they would be the 11 seed, winning a tiebreaker with the Rebs. That would put LSU in the 1st game of the day on Tuesday. If LSU loses this series, they would be the 12 seed, and that would put them in the last game of the day Tuesday. So you can go as high as 10, as low as 12, or out, but it would take a monumental upset for you to end up out of this tournament. LSU would have to be swept by Ole Miss, and Missouri would have to sweep Mississippi State in Starkville. That is not likely. to happen. It could, but that is not likely to happen. That's why I say monumental upset there. So win one game and you're in, and then you could just worry about seeding. Again, you can go as high as 10 and as low as 12 if you get in. You could be playing all throughout the day. Either way, you're going to face some really good teams and give yourself great opportunity, obviously, in Hoover to continue to bolster your resume. All right, prediction time. LSU, Ole Miss. I like the Tigers, but I like them to win 2 out of 3 and then have to do some work in Hoover. LSU's just not good enough to sweep anybody. I've been consistent in saying that, and until they prove me wrong, I will continue to say that. I think Mason Nichols going in Game 3 gives Ole Miss an advantage over anyone that LSU will throw, the same way that I look at Gage Jump and Luke Holman giving LSU an advantage over Ole Miss throwing Riley Maddox and Liam Doyle. Even though Doyle has been pitching very well, even though all of them pitched well last week, I will take Gage Jump and Luke Holman at home in those matchups, and then I will take Mason Nichols over anybody that LSU really throws out there right now in a game number 3. They just haven't been good enough. And it's, again, not a knock on LSU's pitching staff there. It's much more of a knock on LSU's ability to hit with runners in scoring position, which in their last 10 game 3s, they're hitting 141 and have left 70 guys on base. They're great in advancement opportunities. They're getting guys there, 40% in their advancement opportunities, but they're leaving them all on base. So give me 2 out of 3. I think LSU finishes at 12 and 18, and a game or 2 in Hoover should give you a resume worthy of selection. You'd have to watch the soft bubble, see what happens around the country, bid stealers and all of that. But sweep guarantees it, I think. But I don't think they get that. I think 2 out of 3, and you do some work in Hoover. All right, we'll have you covered here wall-to-wall on Musso at the Box throughout the weekend. Get subscribed, smash the like button on your favorite podcast app. Get subscribed, follow me on social media, and be here next time for more on Musso at the Box.